the second season of the Vidarbha Literary Festival, your friendly neighborhood and all-inclusive Lit Fest. So, as I look around the room, I see an eclectic crowd, but I can still bet that if I can randomly ask any 25-plus-year-old present here, or anywhere across the subcontinent, what is the one siren song we all are begrudgingly familiar with? The answer will be a dejected unison. Shadi Kab. I've heard a lot that myself. So, from the halwais to the pandals, from the couture to the food, the decor, precious little is left under the $1 million industry of marriage. Yes, I said industry and not institution. As that is all it has boiled down to us. I am sure that I can stand for a generation of skeptics who, when it comes to marriages, are not really sure whether we actually want it or not. Having said that, it can't be forgotten that our ancestors have tied the knot to the concept of holy matrimony. Anything traditional cannot be discounted and shouldn't be outrightly accepted either. Without deliberation and definitely without giving a personal thought. To discuss further, for the united clarity as we seek as readers, our authors Sunaina Arya and Sindhu Rajasekaran in conversation with Bianca Nazareth Arya. Senior Research Fellow Sunaina Arya works at the Jawaharlal Nehru University Center for Philosophy, New Delhi, India. She was a founding member of Global Dalit Changemakers, a program of the India-China Institute at the New School in New York City, USA, and won an honorable mention in the Blue Stone Rising Scholar Prize in 2019, given by Brandeis University in Massachusetts, USA. She has served as a resource for lectures, open forums, seminars, podcasts, and webinars both domestically and internationally. Her work provides an empirical, philosophical, conceptual, and historical understanding of Dalit feminism, making her book a landmark in gender and caste studies. Sindhu Rajasekaran is I've just introduced her, and I've been told, I did attend a stellar session of yours yesterday, so I think most of us are familiar with her work, and I highly recommend you read her book as well. So I'll just quickly move on to introduce our moderator for today. Our moderator for today, Dr. Bianca Nazareth Arya, juggles a career in dentistry with avid traveling, reading, photography, writing, and theatre. That's 5, right? She has performed in several stage productions in a leading role, as well as written several short stories, poems, and even scripts for one-act plays. She has been published in a peer-reviewed poetry journals and a poetry anthology for Into the Void magazine. Her ability to emote on stage is closely linked to her interest in writing as characters come alive on paper. We have an amazing bunch of panelists right now, and I invite our moderator to please escort the authors on stage and begin with the session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this panel discussion on marriage, present, and the future. I welcome warmly our 2 panelists, Sunaina Arya and Sindhu Rajasekaran. So lovely to have you here. You know, this is like my coffee with Karan-esque moment. I almost feel I should have like coffee mugs here and a gift hamper before I start the rapid fire. But despite this flippant start, I do hope this conversation is sincere, honest, thought-provoking, and maybe even rough around the edges. So let's get this party started, right? Now, today we are going to talk about marriage, present, and the future. So it's only fair that we should examine what it was in the past. And so, Sindhu, my first question is to you, that how has marriage evolved in India over the last few hundred years, if it has evolved, that is, pre-colonial era and during and post?
Thank you very much for that question. I'm so excited to be here with you and with Sunaina. I was chatting with her yesterday and I was telling her I'm so honored to be here with you because I love her book. I've read her book. And you should all read it. It's an amazing book. It's Dalit feminist theory, and she's really bringing a new way of looking at it, you know. So not many people have done that, and you should absolutely read her book. So anyway, having said that, talking about what you asked me just now, so the thing is that, you know, my research right now is in gender and sexuality in colonial India. And I've been fascinated by what I've been finding there because I had no idea, right? Like that so many communities in India were matriarchal communities. They did not even have the, the concept of marriage. Like they would have many partners. So what happened was the British brought in this rule that unless you have a registered married husband, your child would not be registered in the system. So then they had to start getting married. So they brought in these things. So for many communities, it didn't even exist. But it's not true for all communities, thanks to Brahminical patriarchy. We have, a very set system of how women have to be to perpetuate the bloodline, obviously, right? So that existed as well. So India is always like a mixed bag, like nothing is for everybody. It's always like that. But even within these systems were where they had to be monogamous marriages, right? I mean, where there had to be a marriage between a man and a woman. They were not always monogamous. And there is so much, evidence for this. In poetry, in prose, in like every, we see it in myth. Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about Krishna, right? Who is his favorite? Like she's married to somebody else. So it's so common in our culture for all those transgressions to happen. So that's what marriage is. And in the colonial period, this sort of changed because the Victorian idea of marriage is one man, one woman, be very devoted to each other. And anybody who was not, that was considered like very sacrilegious. And so all Indian communities were aspiring for that. We want to be like that. Like we want to be, elite. So that's the story.
So basically you're saying that we were a woke culture before it became fashionable to be a woke culture.
Absolutely, yeah.
Taking that same question forward, Sunaina, do you feel marriages within the Dalit community have evolved in a similar way, or they have a different history?
Are like one, some people want to follow the mainstream, so how it's happening, and some people want to go intercaste, right? Who are anti-caste people, so to assert their Dalit identity. So it has been that way, yeah.
Similar, you would say.
Yeah.
Before we go deeper into this discussion, since both of you have different marital statuses, you are married for 10 years now and you are unmarried, so I'm hoping both of you will have different perspectives on this.
We both actually share one thing.
Oh my God.
Tell them what it is.
What is that?
I was saying how I've married a guy who can cook because I married him because he cooks. And she said that she will marry a guy who cooks.
So clearly you all have your priorities clear. But having said that, what does marriage mean to you?
You start.
So to me, or to the scholars, Sunaina? Okay.
No, to you personally.
To me?
To you personally.
Well, I think in a patriarchal society and people who prefer monogamy, it's this institution provides some kind of security, especially to the women who are oppressed, and there are laws now against domestic violence. So I think, or dowry cases, all of that. So I think the marriage as an institution does help, but at the same time, like personally, for me, I think I haven't thought really much about marriage, not about my marriage. I've been thinking that first I have to be stable in my life. Like I'm yet to submit my PhD at JNU.
So it's safe to say that at the moment you're on the fence with regard to marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Neither against nor
exactly.
for.
Yeah. Not
Sindhu, how about you? What does marriage mean to you?
Okay, so for the longest time, I did not want to ever get married. Like, it was not on my cards. I didn't believe in the idea of marriage. And even now, although I'm married, it's not like we have a conventional marriage. I mean, I'm bisexual for one thing. So I think you need a partner. So, who accepts you exactly the way you are and shares your life with you. So I think I have that. And that's what marriage means to me. It has to be a partnership that constantly evolves as well. Because what you start off, whatever, you fall madly in love and you get married and you're like, okay, whatever. 5 years later, you're not even talking to each other during the day. You're just like busy with your lives and, all of that. And there's all that tension. So your marriage needs to evolve. So for me, it's all about the fluidity, the constant evolution of it. Otherwise, it'll break apart. It can't stay.
Absolutely. Like I always say, marriage, sometimes soulmates, sometimes cellmates.
That's a good one.
Marriage has a long history of being arguably patriarchal. And it stems from a belief that woman is property And so she passed over from her father's control to her husband's control. And so for centuries, marriage had a transactional nature to it. But it was clear, it was practical. Now, love and passion and all of these other sentiments have entered into the equation. And even if you've had an arranged marriage, you still go into it thinking that you're going to fall in love with this person, right? So do you think that since we all know that love doesn't always last forever, so is it unreal of us to expect marriages to last forever then?
Do you want to? So, so this is something that I think about all the time, right? This is again very important that we don't think of, I don't like to think of marriage as a forever thing, you know. The whole point is you are in it as long as it lasts. It's like a relationship. So you're in it till it lasts. And if it's not good for you or for the partner or for if you have children, they're also traumatized by what's going on in the house, right? So unless it's a healthy relationship or unless you have economic reasons for why you want to keep it together or something like that, and if you're both agreeable to, I mean, I have to tell you, I have friends who, who are not in monogamous marriages, who have polyamorous relationships. They still stay together because economically it works for them. But they, they do whatever they have to do. And they have children together too, and the children are happy. It's a situation, So I think for each couple, it's different. So I don't think it should be forever, though. I believe in divorce.
We should definitely take out the forever from the whole concept of marriage. That's what you're saying. All right. So the next question is for both of you, but we'll start with Sunaina. So you've written a book on Dalit feminism. It's safe to say you've read up and you are a feminist. You also have written a book called Smashing the Patriarchy, and I attended your session yesterday, and you are the poster child of feminism. So obviously I would expect both of you to answer this. So women in the past had clear, defined roles within a marriage. So we cleaned, we cooked, and depending on the time of day, we cuddled either our husband or our child. Now, things have changed. We are expecting more, we want more. We have propelled ourselves into mainstream careers, and therefore we have forced men to take on roles previously alien to them, which were completely reserved for women. So this has caused a lot of confusion. This has caused a lot of resentment for both parties. Do you think feminism could be the virus in the matrix? Could it be partially responsible for the failure of the modern marriage?
So I think feminism in itself is, not to dominate anyone. And so feminism itself is not for women or about women or, just by the women. So feminism, as I see, I call myself a feminist. So feminism is just a perspective and understanding and a standpoint that you see all genders as equal. So it's about equality. So I'd say that in marriages, if it's not equal, if the relationship of a married couple is not of an equal respect and equal dignity, then I think instead of critiquing feminism, we should critique marriage. Yeah.
Excellent. That's a fair point. Sindhu.
That's absolutely lovely, because how you put it, right? That's what we should be critiquing. Because feminism is not the problem here. It's ideally, I would say it's the men within the marriages. The problem is that we don't want to discuss these things, right? We want to push things under the carpet, first of all. And we want to blame feminism because it sounds like a foreign idea. Oh, it came from the West or whatever. But let me say something I'm working on now is to show how Indian women have been badass feminists for generations. So it's not like this idea came from somewhere. I've seen older women, grandmothers, matriarchs, really whip their husbands, they know how to do it, belt the cat. So it's possible, but yeah, feminism is not, I don't think at all, like she said. I think your answer is better.
Yeah, I think I love that sentence.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be critiquing feminism, we should be critiquing marriage. And like you said, just like two people within the marriage have to learn to grow within the marriage, so perhaps the community in general needs to grow grow out of their ideas of a conventional marriage. So now everybody keeps talking about divorce rates, and actually the truth is that divorce rates are actually quite steady, and in some countries even falling. the percentage of people choosing not to marry, that percentage is rising rapidly. So now, just like Mayank said, everybody dreading that question of, shadi kab kar rahe? Right? So that question is always there, and people are genuinely choosing not to marry. There are so many people I know who are happy in their spaces and definitely don't want to. So what are your thoughts on this? Why do you think? What are these reasons?
For why people do not want to get married. I think among you, I'm sure there are lots of young people who are not married yet and who do not intend to get married, and that's absolutely great. Like, take your time. Maybe it doesn't even work for you. And I've interviewed many women in my book, again, who are single and who are happy and never want to get married. They have their hobbies, they have their friends, they have their money, they have their lives. Why do they want to get into a system which will sort of maybe trap them? Right? So your question is basically that why is it rising? Why? I think it's because women are becoming more independent, right? They have their jobs or their inheritances, whatever it is that they have. They just have it and they want to be independent. They do not want to fall within a institution. I think the problem with Indian marriages is that it's institutionalized. Right, and then once you enter it, it's sort of like, especially it's not just with arranged marriages. Even with love marriages, because marriage is a marriage once you marry, Doesn't matter whether you met in a bar or an Auntie G's living room or whatever, it's a marriage. So then you have to please the in-laws and the la and the whole drama. And women are judged based on cooking, based on their, I don't know, whatever, right? So I think women don't want to get into that. They don't want to be judged.
But even men don't want to get married. So, I mean, this feeling is working both ways. Women, yes, I understand, our whole lifestyle has changed, we've become more independent, but even the men don't want to marry anymore.
Actually, that's perfect.
Do you think sex has anything to do with it? The fact that it's so easily available, so easily accessible, it's all over the place, and we don't really see, at least, there were things in a marriage. There was the economics of it, and there was the guarantee of regular sex with one person. And now, neither of it exists, right? So, I mean, it's freely available, and within a marriage, you can't force the woman. So, both things are now taken out of the equation. So, do you think...
I'm going to let her answer this because you're single.
You better answer.
I mean, what is happening in GNU? Like, people use Tinder, or what do they use to find? Not you, but others.
Yeah, we're talking in general. I mean, see, we all know everybody's using Tinder and all the other apps possible.
I was asking somebody yesterday in Nagpur, what do you guys use, and he said it's not a big thing. We can't find people online. We have to meet in person. We still do that. I'm like, okay, that's great. But no, I mean, I don't use Tinder or Bumble. I'm in a monogamous relationship, but I think that you're right, because it's not like you get sex only after you get married. You can have sex before, after, during, whatever. So people don't think of it as a reason for why.
It's one more reason that's taken
and you
away.
have vibrators. So, I mean, even after marriage, it helps.
Yes.
But I think that the question of sex and the question of desire and the ideas of having a choice to stay single or unmarried is not available for everyone. So if we go to the rural parts of India and even South Asian countries, we see that, very eye-opening thing I heard from a journalist, speaker, writer, Sona Khartik in Nepal. And she said in a presentation that, so there Dalit women who are living in slums, they don't have proper house, and that is why they have to get married earlier, so that they get a proper house and the support and some kind of protection in their family. So there I think the institution of marriage is like escape from the Brahmanical patriarchy, so marriage somehow is preventing them from gang rapes and
protecting
rapes and
them.
all those violence. Yeah, so this was something very new for me to hear this perspective that how even child marriage, so she is saying that, if the girl is 16 or 14, there is no age for, teasing or harassment of her. So, but if she gets married, parents think that if she gets married, then she'll be safer.
Yeah.
So I think this idea, we cannot generalize really, and it's
You're
very
absolutely
much,
right, yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
very
this
much
is-
in the urban, educated, middle class
Perfect.
population.
This is precisely the perspective I was looking for, because maybe this whole decline in young people wanting to marry is a very urban concept. Maybe this doesn't apply, these statistics probably don't apply to rural areas at all.
It is a very privileged sort
exactly.
of, discussion.
So speaking of sexuality, let's segue into another aspect of marriage. So in the year 2000 and before, there was no country in the world that legalized same-sex marriages. And then now more than 30 or maybe more countries do so. And I'm sure that number is only going to go up. But while heterosexual marriages seem to be on the decline, we are now fighting and pushing for rights for homosexual ones. Does it feel a bit paradoxical, like as if we are giving rights to people to board an already sinking ship?
No, absolutely not, because it's so important to make that legal, because for those of us who want to have, same-sex marriages, it should be available, it should be an option. It's for them not to choose it. The choice should exist, because why, I wouldn't even say marriage is a sinking ship, right? Because there are so many happy couples, happily in marriages, of whatever caste communities, everybody is in marriages work.
All kinds of marriages.
Yeah, there are all kinds of marriages, and it works for many people. So I don't think it should be a choice. Nothing should not be a choice. But I think we should explore what you were talking about a little bit more, because she's absolutely right? Because the conversation we are having, the choices that we're talking about, it doesn't exist for many people in the country. So how do we address that is the question. What is the future of marriage?
I like how you've taken over the moderators.
Sorry.
Two moderators,
We'll ask you questions now.
feminists, right? So I don't know where to start from, like the homosexual marriages.
Oh, no, you
Yes.
start with your thing and then I'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I think homosexual marriages, I very much agree with Sindhu that, the choice must be there. At least legally and theoretically, we must provide the choice for everyone. And then it's their choice. Let them decide whether they want to get married or not. If there are so many cases of divorces, the institution, the legal institutions are not held responsible for a failure of a marriage. People themselves are, held responsible. So, and also, so many cases people say, oh, you married intercaste or that's why your marriage is failing. So, maybe that might also be a thing, because then family doesn't support you. And when family doesn't support you, it becomes, obviously, it will be more difficult for you to even survive, because there are cases of honor killings. So,
Sunaina and I were talking about this yesterday at dinner, because I come from an intercaste family, right? Like I mentioned, I have Dalit ancestry and Iyengar ancestry, and it makes a very complicated thing. So I've seen how caste works within these marriages, and how it plays out. So I think that's something we need to talk about, because I'm sure many people are in intercaste, interreligious, intercommunity relationships, and most of them fizzle away before marriage because their families don't accept them. And even if they do get married, then as she said, there is no support, because if you married somebody from another caste that you're not happy with or whatever, then you're ostracized, So that's a big problem as well.
We will be coming to that for sure. But before that, on the same subject, the main argument against homosexual marriages is that a man and a woman, the union between a man and a woman, is the bedrock of a healthy society, and because it leads to stable families and productive children. And allowing gay and lesbian couples to wed, it will weaken an already weak institution. These are not my thoughts.
I know. I was
to
just
clarify
like...
before you come to get my throat. So a court filing in India last year, in fact, it even said that it will wreak complete havoc with the delicate balance of personal laws in the country. So how do you counter that?
That's completely BS. Okay, because first of all, even if there is a marriage between a man and woman, it's usually the women in the family who are bringing up the child anyway. So I'm sure a lesbian couple will be doing a great job at that, So will gay men, They're more nurturing. Thank you. So You know, so I don't think that's a good argument at all, first of all. I think this, again, boils down to patriarchy, right? And keeping their bloodlines pure and like keeping, what is a marriage for most people? It's about finding somebody in the same caste, same community, same subcaste, and like same economic status or better. You know, all of that, right? So it's about that. And it's okay for me, for people to make economic marriages. A lot of people make marriages based on, it's an economic proposition for them. I'm just going to get into this to be in a safe space, you know, like I just want all these privileges and I want this marriage, go for it, you know, and these women live a great life. Like, as long as you know what you're getting into, it's fine. But to be pushed into that institution against your wishes. But as far as, you know, homosexual marriages are concerned, I think they'd make great parents. I think those sort of relationships existed in India before, like we were talking, before 377 came into place. A lot of, you know, matriarchal systems, there were same-sex relations, there were women bringing up children, you know, passing on inheritances and ideas and all of that. So I think this whole narrative is just so wrong. And the funny thing is that the West has moved on. Since, although they're the ones who brought 377 to India, they've moved on. And India is still stuck with those horrible ideas. And this has, all of it has to do with the patriarchy, right?
We are stuck with a lot of things from that era.
Yes.
So the acceptance of homosexuality in India has risen from 22% to 37% in just the space of 5 years between 2013 and 19, according to a certain survey. So clearly the acceptance is rising, but the acceptance of homosexuality, homosexual marriages hasn't yet found mainstream acceptance. And the Supreme Court has now ordered the Modi government to give their stand, and we will be hearing sometime
Next
in Feb,
month,
and
yeah.
then next month they will be actually having a ruling on that. How do you predict that's going to go? Do you think there's going to be a win, or do you feel that we're still way from legalizing this marriage?
So since in 2018 they decriminalized the 377, so we could say that you know they might be thinking, but I think not really from a progressive perspective, not from a progressive mindset, but maybe in order to prove to the world that we are also liberal society. Yeah, because we are just developing country from ages, right? We are not developed. So maybe that would be one of the criterias that, you know, yeah, we are also progressing. Look, we have decriminalized it, but still we frown upon them, right? Yeah, so
you mean you feel like it's just a fake, a show,
Yeah.
or a picture for the world to show that we are progressive, but actually down in our hearts, this is just going to be on paper.
Yeah, we can just look at the parliament. How many of the parliament members are queer? How many? What is an inclusion? What is the representation of that community? So, in fact, you know, there were words. I mean, I don't want to name anyone, but I read that, you know, this and this person is being a queer, so should not be appointed here because they will be biased. So because a queer person, yeah, so because a person is queer, they'll be biased. Because someone is a woman, they'll be biased. They're not thinking of it as an inclusion, as a representation, as an opportunity to become a liberal progressive society. They are thinking that only a man, upper caste, middle class, or even higher class, like, you know, the normal kind of man, will be the most unbiased person or authority to make anything. So,
Which is so bizarre, right? But yeah, I hope, as what she says, they just do it for the sake of it.
Even if
it's for that, whatever, just do it. I'll be so happy if that happens. You know, if they want to look woke to the rest of the world. I mean, it's not even woke, it's something else. I don't even know what to call it. So, yeah, but I hope it happens, really, because I think it's due, you know. Because it's so hard, right? Because like we were talking about how marriage is an economic proposition, right? It just makes it easier for a couple to be married. Like things like, you know, you can't have a bank account together, you can't buy a house together. Like practical things, like you need that for queer couples, you know, because otherwise they have to be live-in partners, and it just complicates everything. All the paperwork that they have to do. As it is in India, you do so much paperwork. Then imagine how much more paperwork these people have to do to just stay together in just a relationship, or like, you know, whatever it is. So it's due.
I'm circling back to the original thing, which is so weird that heterosexual couples are actually rejecting that idea and preferring live-ins because, I mean,
They have a
homosexuals want to do
choice.
it because it's just easier. And now
Yeah.
here we have people saying that no, we don't want to. Anyway, my last question on the subject, and this is directed to you, Sindhu. You are queer by your own definition, and of course you are now partnered with a man and you have a daughter, but in the years before, when you were exploring your own sexuality, when you were seeing women, at that time, did it bother you that if at all you find a life partner who's a woman, it would be difficult? And do you feel that there are many people who make choices because it's the path of least resistance and just go with the flow, either denying their sexuality or choosing between the two? Like when you're bisexual, you just choose the man or choose because it's just easier.
So this is the thing about bisexuality, that we should have a separate session. It's a complicated thing because it's not like one time you're interested in a man, another time you're sometimes interested in both at the same time, right? And it just happens who you fall in love with. So for us, it doesn't matter, like for me at least, it doesn't matter what gender that person is. It's just the person that I'm falling in love with. But definitely as a teenager growing up, when I was dating girls, one of the things that would be said to me was that how will you ever make this work? Like how will you live in this country? What would you call each other? Will she be your husband? You know? And then will she transition? You know, stuff like this would be asked to me. And to her, who I was dating at that time, right? So these are such traumatic things to go. As it is, relationships are hard, right? Any relationship is hard. And then you have to go through all this trauma as well, plus all of that. So it is a very hard thing to do. So in my journey, it just so happened that I ended up marrying, a man. But it was not like a planned thing or like a choice that I made I was not dating a woman at that time. So, but no guarantee
But
to
you
say.
can see that that's what people do sometimes because it's just so
Yeah,
tough.
for sure. I'm sure that happens, right? And that's what I was saying, even in India, with pre-colonial India, one of the things I'm constantly seeing in my research is that people would marry for economic reasons or for just because it's the thing to do, but doesn't mean they wouldn't have all these other relationships.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know.
So what the point I thought of is that by legalizing homosexual marriages, by default, by giving, your blessing to that relationship, all those people who deny themselves their own sexuality and getting into heterosexual marriages and therefore causing higher divorce rates or higher unhappy marriages would probably be taken out of the equation automatically because they'll find their own partner and live in proper legal
Absolutely,
union. Right?
yeah, that's possible. And I hope that happens.
Yes, I hope
Fingers
so too.
crossed.
So, all right. So, coming back to the point you raised before that. So, I'm a Roman Catholic woman. I married a Rajput Hindu, and it happened minus resistance, minus drama. But I realize, because for me, an interfaith, intercaste marriage is doable, except from a very privileged point of view. And I also realize that this is not the norm. So, what do you feel on that? I mean, how easy or difficult really intercaste marriages are?
Well, I would say it's not easy for sure. Even maintaining an intercaste relationship is very difficult. In fact, we are talking about alliances and feminist alliances, and it's very difficult to even have that much of trust and support and that genuine commitment and empathy. So that's a big problem. It will take a long time for us to. So intercaste marriages, as you mentioned about your inter-religion marriage. So I would say that it's different for different people. So had you not been a Christian and been a Muslim, the backlash and the retaliation would
Might
be
have been
very,
completely different.
very,
Absolutely, I agree.
Might be worse than honor killing. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, but just thinking, through.
Thank you. Just one quick question. You showed me a signboard 10 minutes. Is 10 minutes for me or 10 minutes in general? For me. Okay, thank you. Because I have so many more questions. This is such an interesting conversation. So, Sindhu, what do you think would affect a child's psyche more? Living with unmarried parents and having to answer questions and, live that confusion out that why aren't my parents married? Yeah. I'm talking about people who are unmarried by choice, living in, but they have a child. As opposed to a child who has to bear the trauma of a divorce. So which would probably be the worst thing? Or would they be, or am I comparing chalk with cheese?
I mean, I cannot say, right? Because I think it's such an individual, subjective thing that because some parents who do get divorced, not all of them are traumatized. Some parents are very good at making their children, taking them to the therapist and like making them understand what's going on, and like they have a family counselor and they know how to ease the child into it. So it's not always traumatic. And that should not be a reason why you don't get divorced because, oh, I'll traumatize my child. Because the child's getting traumatized anyway. But so I think, and not that children of parents who are in stable marriages don't get traumatized either. So, so it's nothing, there's no like, comparison in that sense to me. But I think the sort of, this I even addressed in my book, right? Like with single mothers even, in India, the sort of support systems that you have are so little. So those are fears that people have of why they can't leave a marriage. Because where is your support system? Will it come from your family? Will it come from work? Do they give you extra space because you're a working mom who doesn't have a partner? Like, do they care at work? No, they're not just going to be like, oh, you can't have this job, or you can't get promoted because you can't handle the pressure or whatever, right? So it's all those things. So single parents, as in not single parents, but parents who are unmarried, I think they're very few in India, to be honest, because it's not easy. How will your child get admission in school? How will your child get anything? Aadhaar card. Anything. Like, everything is an impediment. So people do not make those choices as easily here. And even in the West, in the UK, I know many couples who are partnered, civil partnerships, they would not be married. It's hard to just do the paperwork. It's only for the paperwork,
Finally, we're coming down to paperwork only. So, Sunaina, the stigma around divorce has lifted to some degree, even in India. And in fact, if you go onto social media, there are several women who are announcing their divorces almost as happily and proudly as they are announcing their weddings. So again, is this limited to some people, and the majority of India, it's still a big stigma? Or do you feel that this is a sign of things to come and eventually in the next few years?
Yeah, so I think there are many issues related with this idea of divorce for most of the people. One everybody knows, I mean, it is very common that if your marriage is not lasting, have a child. एक बच्चा कर लो. Yeah. So,
Description.
Yeah, बच्चा कर लो. Everything will be fine. Like, even if your husband is having an affair, एक बच्चा कर लो. So that is the thing about, people would not have divorced. Instead, they'll have a kid in order to, sustain. So the sanctity of marriage is very, very much, revered in our society. And that is why divorce is looked as, it's not a matter of choice. Like, every family, all the families will get involved. And they'll be like, I mean, more than how you decided to marry on your own, more than that, they'll be like, how can you decide to divorce, right? How can you? And like, what do you mean that sex is not good? And something like that,
What is that?
Like, and they'll suggest so many things, that is our society.
And usually it's like, at least tumko marta to nahi hai.
Yeah.
Translate, please.
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. At least he doesn't hit you.
Okay.
Like, basically, if you say that, the sex is not good, or, he doesn't give me time, or he's so aloof, they'll probably come up with a worst case scenario. At least, like, he doesn't hit you, or he doesn't come home drunk every day. Like, you're probably, I have a wonderful husband, because he doesn't do that.
And in rural areas and some of the middle class, even in some urban areas, in Delhi, I heard recently a case, last week only. So some woman is, domestically violated by her husband, and her own mom says, it's your husband only who's beating you up. Yeah. So, तुम्हारा ही पति है, कोई और तो नहीं मार रहा है. So even that is there. So I think the idea of divorce and anything against divorce has to do with the notion of choice. So how can a couple decide? Because there's a long history. if I can go into theoretical about marriage. So marriages in India and South Asian countries had been endogamous. So endogamy, if you don't know, endogamy is same caste marriage. So same caste marriage was a way to maintain the caste system. So because women were looked as a door to the, an entry to the other caste. So now if you choose your partner on your own, or intercaste person or an interreligion person, it is seen as an invitation for rapes, threats, gang rapes, murders, honor killings, what they call honor. So the honor is like the caste purity. And so I'm telling you, like, why this is in the practice today, because originally, so like that time, I'm not blaming Brahmins, but around that time when Brahmins were creating all these scriptures and, the caste system, they had this idea that the numeric balance in one particular caste should be maintained. So like if there are 100 Brahmins and 100, there would be 50 women and 50 men. So if one's husband dies, then in order to balance that surplus woman, they call it surplus woman. So that woman who is regarded as extra in the community, she would be an entry for alliance with another person. So then she will break the balance in that caste, and then if she doesn't break the balance in that caste, she'll go to another caste. That is why sati was invented. So
I think this is a conversation that we are going to have to take on for a longer session, because clearly there's so much to be said on the subject. Since
just one. So
I just want to
sati,
circle back to, so what you're saying is that basically is that marriages in certain communities have had a difficult and long history, right? And so all these practices, they are still, though they are not in favor anymore, are you saying that they still exist?
I cannot say that sati exists, but in 2020 I did a research on that is my paper published called Theorizing Gender in South Asia, where I worked on South Asian countries, and I found that how not just the idea of not that sati, like people had suspected cases of sati in Tamil Nadu as well, and Nepal and India in 2015, as late as 15 and 17. So it was suspected case, and then people said that no, I saw that woman went on her will. She died. Yeah, so the entire village is saying, I have seen her doing this. So, but this is not, claimed as sati. While in one case, the brother of the girl who died said that, yes, my sister, proudly became sati.
Okay.
So even if that is not there, let's say that it's not there, even then, and there are ideas of sati which is revered still in our society. That is reward. And yeah, when we talked about
Stigma of
divorce, when you talked about stigma of divorce, in rural areas, even being a widow is better than, you get divorced. Yeah, so widow was another
so that
mechanism.
means that it still very much exists. Thank you so much, and I'm going to open up the floor for questions because we are short of time, but I want to continue this conversation behind the scenes.
You have a session coming up, so if you want to hear more about what she's saying,
yes.
she has a session coming up.
Yes,
so she will tell you more.
So
I hope I'll be more confident there. I'm very nervous here.
you're
you
doing
certainly
great.
don't seem nervous, and you've given us some very, very nice perspectives. So your question, please.
पुराने ज़माने में हिंदू धर्म के अनुसार जो शादी है कि ये विवाह एक संस्था मानी जाती है। तो अभी लिव इन रिलेशनशिप जैसे बढ़ रहा है, तो आपको ऐसा नहीं लगता कि ये संस्था खत्म होते जा रही है?
So basically he's saying that in the Hindu culture and the Hindu religion, marriage was an institution, and because of live-in relationships, that institution is being de-institutionalized.
So can I say something? I have an argument for this. So basically, she was talking about divorce rates rising in India, right? So if you weed out all the bad ones before you get married by living with them, and then you see which is the best option and then marry.
All right. Thank
Next
you.
question, please.
Next question.
So let's keep the dharma alive.
The devil you know.
Yeah, hi. So there is a concept of Plato regarding communism of wives, right? Communism of wives and property.
Communism of wives
And property. That is like in that state, the person will not marry. They will eventually make a child with another one, whomever they like. And the state will be responsible for that child. The concept by the
So
Plato.
basically, communism applied to marriage. So
So
Okay.
it is
Common
concept
property.
given by the Plato for the stateless
Children
society.
are common property of the state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there will be no institution called marriage.
Yeah,
So-
that would be, I mean, you're talking about like free, like, you know, hippie living, man.
Yeah.
So that again
That will be
favors
stateless.
the men again.
Yeah, which is great.
Communism of wives. What is that? Wives and
No way, that's not
property.
catching on ever.
And property. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the marriage is now degrading. So many people don't want to get married. So will this concept will gain more popularity now?
I think she's already answered that it won't catch on.
It's
so
not
can we
catching
move on
on.
to the next question?
Yeah. My suggestion through you, ma'am, when you are talking about marriage, there should be representatives from all the genders.
I agree.
Because we are listening all these things from...
Thank you very much for that valuable suggestion, and I agree with this. Oh, you have. I'm sure you do. 1 minute. But I want to say this with regard to representation.
Having said that, because what Sunaina ma'am said, transgenders don't marry, isn't it? That's why they are extra in our society, and that's why they live the kind of life they are living.
They do marry.
Yeah.
don't know.
I did not say
Yeah,
that.
she did not say that.
Maybe
you said
perhaps you misunderstood.
Sati is extra person,
Surplus woman,
surplus
yeah.
woman,
Yeah.
and these transgenders are surplus amongst male and
So
female.
I would have to interject a little right now. The meaning and the topic of the discussion that Sunaina ma'am said was a totally different thing, and we certainly do not propound that any kind of trans people are extras
Yeah,
ever.
yeah, absolutely. I think there was some misunderstanding there.
There is a different session
but
which
I
has
do
happened right
agree,
before. Yeah.
Mayank, I do agree with you that there should be representation. But then when we talk about equal representation, then we need representation of every caste, creed, sex, and gender and everything. So which is not always practically possible. So perhaps today you've only heard an opinion and perspective from two ladies, but that does not mean that we discount that there are other perspectives. So next time we'll have a man as well. And you
More
want to reply
senior
to that.
people are needed to give a proper and a balanced perspective to
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, ma'am. Do you want to take that?
No, I mean, I agree with you. Maybe 10, 20 years later, I'll say many different things.
Perhaps one aspect of why this representation is strictly young is because we're talking about the present and future. Not so much of a discussion. But yes, I agree. Like I started in the beginning, we always should know where we are coming from. Yeah, sure, please.
I
The
should
next
have brought
question,
my
please.
mum to this panel. This would be a totally different conversation.
If we think marriage is a failed institution, which probably agrees with the youngsters, we also need to discuss the alternatives to marriage. If
And there is no good alternative at this point.
society function without marriage also needs to.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Definitely a question worth pondering. We'll definitely have a session on it next
I
time.
think, Mayank, you need to tell the next session that, we are taking over.
So I have two quick questions. First of all, how do you address the question of, people who are old and not married about facing lonesome and depression, It's better to, it can be individual perspective, but how do you address that? And second thing, I think whatever, I have not read the book, but whatever examples we are giving are very limited population, whereas what about, like every girl today prefers to date and then marry. And there are many examples of even tier 2, tier 3 cities where there are intercaste marriages accepted. Talking about transgender, there is one guy, somebody is conceiving a child, it was in social media for the last 2 days. A transgender is conceiving a child. There was lesbian, couple who
No,
got
I'm
married
going
last
to
year.
interrupt you here.
So
I
the thing
really
is-
want to know the question.
Yeah,
Yes.
because what I've heard about conversation about sati and other things, which I've heard in many communications, many such panels, some film reviews and all, I doubt that there is a hidden agenda behind, I think that, that you are targeting something else, at least partly, through attacking on marriage.
Let me just say to everybody here, nobody is attacking marriage. I'm married
Not
for
about
10 years. Hello. I had a Hindu wedding. Okay, I'll send you pictures. So let me just say that nobody's attacking any of those institutions. We are talking about the future of marriage. She's talking about the realities in India right now. So if you do not want to listen to the realities, those are the realities. And what I'm talking about is just what women want to. These women are doing it, in Nagpur. So look at, talk to the
That was a
women.
wonderful discussion.
Sir,
That was wonderful
sir,
discussion,
one second.
no doubt about it.
I just want to interject here. I would have to do that. I'm sorry, that's my duty. But the thing is, we as an informed crowd seeking more information are actually looking for an informed discussion, right? We are not bringing up terms. We are definitely not coming here with an agenda apart from inclusivity and information.
Also, I'd like to answer that question. The first half of your question. The second half, unfortunately, I didn't get. So the first half was about older people who are struggling with depression and loneliness. And nobody said that there's any age bar to marry. That companionship can come at any age and should come at any age. If someone chooses to marry at that age, that's also welcome, which some famous actresses have at the age of 60. And on the other hand, you can just have a companion at that time. So we are not against marriage. Like she said, she's 10 years married, I'm 17 years married. So no. We are not against the institution. It's just that, yes, we are not on either side. We are just saying that this is how, these are the trends, these are the statistics, this is what is happening, whether we want to accept it or not. We just have to find a way, and like ma'am said, we need to find an alternative, how to deal with it. And clearly, we spend more time in India preparing for weddings rather than we spend preparing for marriages. And that's what needs to change.
Correct.
So just another question.
Can we have one last question, please?
Yeah, just one last question. So there are a lot of statistics that show that children with single mother or single father get into crime and drugs a lot. So we talk a lot about independence and the choice to do what we want. But shouldn't we be held more accountable and responsible before we enter and leave marriage?
I will answer this as well. Where did you read the statistics that single parents produce children who do drugs? Or get into those things? That's not true. It is, I think any child can get into those practices. It's not like single parents. In fact, single parents are more devoted to their children. They have to be. They're the only person there. In other marriages, you can't really say that. In India are a great force. The fact that we even, do not even recognize them. We don't have any statistics about them in India. How pathetic that is. We don't even talk about them.
Exactly, because when I was reading up for this, I was hard pressed to find any kind of statistics with regard to all these subjects in
It's a
India.
taboo thing.
Credible statistics.
There may be some truth to whatever you are saying. I don't have any information. But you pointed out to this earlier that we don't have any support system. So I think it's a lot to do with us creating those support systems. We need support systems that are going to be there for single parents also. Today,
Valid.
one of the reasons why people have to stay in marriages is because of the support systems once they have children. So you need support systems where you can even bring up a child if you don't have a partner, you don't have a marriage, you can still do it. So we have to look at it a little more holistically or on how everybody can contribute to bringing up a child.
A very valid
Thank
approach.
you.
And because of the brevity of the time, I notice a lot of hands being raised up. But I actually invite all of you
Let's all
to
head
share
down
your
with it.
opinions, as most of you have been doing. Ask your questions, as most of you want to, in the live wire space, where both authors are available. Get their books, get them signed. And that's going to be a more holistic approach, because time is a very, very, very scarce resource we have. So I take this opportunity to thank our panelists, our moderator, for a very, very rousing session. Thank you so much.